was supposed to be a peaceful weekend at my cabin in the woods. The serene sound of nature was my escape from the chaos of city life. Little did I know my tranquility was about to be disrupted by the infamous HOA Karen, a self-appointed guardian of neighborhood rules and regulations. As I settled in, enjoying the fresh air and the smell of pine, my phone buzzed. A message from the Homeowners Association popped up. Noise complaint received. Please keep it down. I rolled my eyes. It was the first day of fall and a few friends were playing some classic rock. It wasn't exactly a rager. Not long after, I heard a rumble in the distance. The sound grew louder, and soon I saw a pair of SUVs pulling up to my cabin. I squinted, trying to see who it was. To my surprise, it was the HOA security team, two burly guys in uniforms, clearly not accustomed to the great outdoors. They approached with a mix of authority and trepidation, clipboard in hand. "We received complaints about noise," one of them said, trying to sound official. I couldn't help but chuckle. Just then, my phone buzzed again. It was my cousins, veterans who had decided to surprise me with a visit. I had told them about the cabin, and they were eager to see it. They rolled in on their Harleys, the sound of their engines echoing through the trees. As they parked, the HOA security team's demeanor changed. With the rumble of the Harleys and the sight of my cousins clad in leather, the two security guards exchanged nervous glances. My cousins approached with their trademark grins, and I could see the tension in the air. "Everything all right here?" one of my cousins asked, his voice booming with a mix of authority and friendliness. The guards fumbled over their words, trying to explain the situation. I stood back, arms crossed, enjoying the show. "Just a minor noise complaint," one of them stammered. But the sight of my cousins, who had served in the army and could handle any situation, clearly intimidated them. They glanced at the Harleys, then at my cousins, and suddenly their resolve crumbled. We'll just, check on other complaints," one of the guards said, backing away slowly. They jumped into their SUVs and sped off, leaving a cloud of dust behind. My cousins and I burst into laughter. "Guess they weren't ready for a real party," I said, raising a toast with my drink. The rest of the weekend was filled with bonfires, laughter, and the sounds of our favorite music, echoing through the trees without a care in the world. Thanks to the timely arrival of my army cousins, HOA Karen's plans to ruin my weekend had backfired spectacularly. From that day on, I made sure to keep my cousin's visit a secret whenever I headed up to the cabin. After all, who wouldn't want the ultimate backup against the HOA? The sun dipped low in the sky as I arrived at my secluded cabin, nestled among towering pines and surrounded by the gentle sounds of nature. This was my sanctuary, a place where I could escape the hustle and bustle of city life, leaving behind deadlines and traffic jams. As I settled in, I took a deep breath, inhaling the crisp, earthy scent of the woods. I had planned this weekend for weeks, hoping to recharge my spirit. I set up my favorite spot on the porch, complete with a comfortable chair and a cooler full of drinks. My friends were set to arrive later, and I was excited for a few days of laughter and camaraderie. However, I knew the HOA had its eyes on me. Ever since I purchased the cabin, I had been subjected to the watchful glare of Karen, the self-appointed enforcer of neighborhood rules. She took it upon herself to ensure that everyone followed her interpretation of the HOA bylaws. Chapter 2. The first shot fired as the sun began to set. I lit a fire in the fire pit. The crackling flames danced in the twilight, and I turned up the music. Classic rock, an essential part of my weekend rituals. I was lost in the moment when my phone buzzed violently in my pocket. HOA complaint received. Noise level exceeds acceptable limits. I rolled my eyes, muttering under my breath. Was a little music too much to ask? I decided to ignore the message and focus on the evening. As the stars twinkled overhead, my friends arrived, bringing laughter and good vibes with them. Chapter 3. Arrival of security. The next day, after a night of stories and laughter, I was awakened by the sound of tires crunching on gravel. Peering through the window, I spotted two SUVs parked outside. My heart sank as I recognized the uniforms. It was HOA security sent by Karen herself. Great, I thought. Just what I needed. My friends exchanged glances, unsure whether to be concerned or amused. As the security guards approached, clipboard in hand, I stood my ground. "Good morning. What seems to be the problem?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "Noise complaints," one of them said. shifting uncomfortably. We need to ask you to turn it down. Chapter 4. The unexpected allies. At that moment, I received a text from my cousins. They were on their way, riding their Harleys through the mountains. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. My cousins, tough, reliable, and always up for a good time, were the perfect backup. As the guards continued their speech about noise levels and community standards, I could hear the distant roar of motorcycles approaching. My heart raced in anticipation. Moments later, my cousins rolled into view, their leather jackets gleaming in the sunlight. The deep rumble of their Harleys drowned out any remaining hope the security guards had of enforcing the rules. Chapter 5. The showdown, the contrast between the two groups, was striking. My cousins, veterans of the army, exuded confidence and charisma. They parked their bikes with a flourish and approached the cabin, grinning from ear to ear. "What's going on?" one of them asked, eyeing the security guards. The guards looked increasingly uncomfortable, standing stiffly in their uniforms. "Just a minor noise complaint," I said, trying to suppress a smile. One of my cousins chuckled. "Minor, huh? You should see how we handle noise complaints in the army." The security guards exchanged nervous glances, their bravado waning with every word my cousin spoke. Chapter 6. The Great Retreat. Feeling the pressure, one of the guards finally stammered, "We'll just check on other complaints." Without another word, they hurried back to their SUVs, eager to escape the situation. As they sped away, clouds of dust filled the air, a fitting retreat for their failed mission. "Looks like they weren't ready for us." My cousin laughed, clapping me on the back. We settled back into our weekend, the fire crackling and the music flowing freely. The atmosphere was electric, filled with the joy of camaraderie and the freedom of being away from prying eyes. Chapter 7. An unlikely celebration. The rest of the day was spent enjoying the beauty of nature. We hiked through the woods, shared stories around the fire, and even indulged in a bit of karaoke under the stars. My cousins, with their military background, turned out to be surprisingly good singers, belting out classic rock anthems that had us all laughing and singing along. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I felt a sense of peace. The chaos of the city felt worlds away, and I was grateful for the bond I shared with my family. Chapter 8. The HOA strikes back. As the weekend came to an end, I received yet another notification from the HOA. This time, it was a warning about potential fines for violating noise ordinances. I couldn't help but laugh. "Let them try," I said, sharing the message with my cousins. They exchanged knowing glances, their smiles widening. "We'll be back next time," one cousin said, "and we'll bring more friends." Chapter 9. Building a strategy back in the city. I began to brainstorm ways to combat Karen's ever-watchful eye. My cousins and I formed a plan. We would host a larger gathering next time, one that would attract even more of our friends. Perhaps it was time to unite our neighbors against Karen's reign of terror. After all, who doesn't love a good party? Chapter 10. The final countdown weeks passed, and anticipation built for our next weekend at the cabin. I spread the word among friends and family, and before I knew it, I had a small army of supporters ready to join the cause. When the day finally arrived, we descended upon the cabin with a vengeance. The sound of laughter and music filled the air, echoing through the trees. My cousins arrived early, revving their bikes and setting the tone for what was to come. Chapter 11. The HOA's last stand. Karen wasn't going to take this lying down. Just as we were settling into the festivities, I spotted her in the distance, marching up the path with a determined look on her face. "Not this time," I whispered to my cousins. They exchanged knowing glances and positioned themselves near the entrance, ready to confront her if needed. "Excuse me," Karen shouted as she approached, her voice cutting through the music. "You can't have this party here." Chapter 12. The rebellion. I stepped forward, fueled by the support of my friends and family. "And why not, Karen? We're all just here to enjoy the weekend and each other's company." She opened her mouth to protest, but my cousins stepped in, their presence commanding respect. "We're all in the same community," one of them said. "Why can't we enjoy it together?" With the weight of our numbers and the camaraderie of friends behind me, I felt a surge of confidence. Karen realized she was outnumbered and began to back down, her face flushed with frustration. Chapter 13. A new era. The tension dissipated as Karen retreated, muttering under her breath. We cheered, raising our drinks in celebration. The rest of the weekend unfolded in pure joy. Music, laughter, and the warmth of friendship filled every corner of the cabin. As the sun set on our last evening, I marveled at how far we had come. What had started as a simple weekie. It was a crisp autumn weekend when I decided to escape the noise of city life and retreat to my family's cabin nestled deep in the woods. The vibrant colors of the leaves were a sight to behold, and I was ready for a peaceful weekend filled with hiking, fishing, and solitude. However, my peace was short-lived. Just as I was settling in with a cup of hot cocoa, I received a text from my neighbor, who I affectionately referred to as HOA Karen. She was notorious for her overzealous enforcement of the homeowners association rules, and she had a penchant for reporting even the slightest infraction. Just a heads up, I saw someone parked at your cabin that shouldn't be there. I've called HOA security. They'll be there shortly, the message read. I chuckled at the absurdity. Who would report me at my own cabin? I decided to ignore her and went about my day. Little did I know she was serious. An hour later, I heard the unmistakable sound of a vehicle crunching gravel outside. Peering out the window, I saw two men dressed in ill-fitting security uniforms, looking uncomfortable and a bit lost. They were clearly there to confront me about my illicit stay at the cabin. Just as I was about to step outside to confront them, the roar of motorcycle engines shattered the quiet. My cousins, recently returned from active duty and eager for a weekend of brotherhood, came barreling down the dirt road on their Harleys. They were a sight to behold. Leather jackets, bandanas, and grins that said they were ready for anything. The security guards looked at each other, wide-eyed, as the heavy bikes came to a halt in front of my cabin. My cousins dismounted, their presence instantly shifting the mood. The guards, clearly intimidated, shuffled nervously as my cousins approached. Hey, what's going on here? One of my cousins asked, a playful smirk on his face. The guards stammered, trying to explain their presence. But before they could get too far into their explanation, my cousins laughed and waved them off. You guys can leave now. We don't need any security here. And just like that, the guards turned tail and fled, leaving behind their dignity and a bewildered HOA Karen's phone call. My cousins and I burst into laughter, reveling in the absurdity of it all. We spent the rest of the weekend reminiscing, riding through the gorgeous fall foliage, and enjoying the freedom that came with being away from the watchful eyes of HOA Karen. In the end, the cabin remained undisturbed, and I learned that sometimes all you need is a couple of army cousins on Harleys to keep the peace. It was a crisp autumn weekend when I decided to escape the noise of city life and retreat to my family's cabin nestled deep in the woods. The vibrant colors of the leaves, fiery reds, golden yellows, and burnt oranges, were a sight to behold, and I was ready for a peaceful weekend filled with hiking, fishing, and solitude. I had been looking forward to this getaway for weeks. My cabin was a sanctuary, a place where I could disconnect from the world and reconnect with nature. As I unpacked my things, I could already feel the stress of city life melting away. Little did I know my tranquility was about to be interrupted. Just as I was settling in with a cup of hot cocoa, I received a text from my neighbor, whom I affectionately referred to as HOA Karen. Known for her overzealous enforcement of the homeowners association rules, she had a penchant for reporting even the slightest infraction. Just a heads up, I saw someone parked at your cabin that shouldn't be there. I've called HOA security. They'll be there shortly, the message read. I chuckled at the absurdity. Who would report me at my own cabin? Was it a crime to enjoy my own property? I decided to ignore her and went about my day, heading out for a hike on the nearby trails. As I trekked through the woods, breathing in the fresh, crisp air, I felt liberated. The sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves were a perfect soundtrack to my escape. But my peace was short-lived. An hour later, I returned to the cabin to find two men dressed in ill-fitting security uniforms standing awkwardly on my porch, looking uncomfortable and somewhat out of place. What brings you gentlemen here? I asked, eyebrow raised. We received a report about unauthorized use of this property, one of them said, shifting nervously. They looked like they were more accustomed to mall security than handling confrontations in the woods. Just as I was about to step outside to confront them, the unmistakable sound of motorcycle engines shattered the quiet. My cousins, recently returned from active duty and eager for a weekend of brotherhood, came barreling down the dirt road on their Harleys. They were a sight to behold. Leather jackets, bandanas, and grins that said they were ready for anything. The security guards looked at each other, wide-eyed, as the heavy bikes came to a halt in front of my cabin. My cousins dismounted, their presence instantly shifting the mood. The guards, clearly intimidated, shuffled nervously as my cousins approached. "Hey, what's going on here?" one of my cousins asked, his playful smirk betraying a hint of mischief. The guards stammered, trying to explain their presence. "We're here because of a complaint about someone being here without permission," one finally managed to say. My cousins exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of amusement and disbelief. "You guys can leave now. We don't need any security here," another cousin said, crossing his arms and leaning back slightly, exuding a confidence that only military service could instill. The guards hesitated, clearly weighing their options. But the sight of my cousins, big, tough, and unyielding, was enough to send them into a panic. They turned tail and fled, leaving behind their dignity, and undoubtedly a bewildered HOA Karen, who had likely been waiting for an update. Once they were gone, my cousins burst into laughter, their deep voices echoing in the quiet woods. "Did we just scare off the HOA security?" one of them joked, slapping my back. I couldn't help but join in the laughter, feeling relieved and amused at the absurdity of the situation. We spent the rest of the weekend reminiscing, riding through the gorgeous fall foliage, and enjoying the freedom that came with being away from the watchful eyes of HOA Karen. There were bonfires under a starlit sky, stories of their adventures overseas, and plenty of teasing about who could catch the biggest fish. On the last night, as we sat around the fire, I realized how much I had missed this, a sense of camaraderie and the joy of shared experiences. "You know," I said, gazing into the flames, "I think we should make this a tradition. A yearly getaway, just like this." My cousins nodded in agreement, their eyes sparkling with excitement. "Next time we'll bring more bikes and maybe even some friends," one suggested. As the fire crackled and the stars twinkled overhead, I couldn't help but smile. In the end, the cabin remained undisturbed, and I learned that sometimes all you need is a couple of army cousins on Harleys to keep the peace and remind you of what truly matters. Family, friendship, and a little bit of fun.